So anyway, let's do the briefing part very quickly, and then we can talk about the timeline. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Okay. So the briefing part is that there were a couple of executive decisions made in the last month because it was very, very hard to convene a meeting. But between George, Mike, Buck, and myself, we were up against the deadline of whatever it was, and we all were a little bit very concerned. We had conversations with Joanne and with George, but really the concern wasn't the overground lights as much as the underground, because that's just a big unknown of the expense and the mostly the time and expense. Just one more second. So we decided that we would be incremental in our approach, and we would just look for grant funding to purchase the above ground streetlights, because those are in the those are not in the worst condition, but those are all the incandescents that they're going to replace anyway, or they should have replaced when they went out, whether they did or not. And that would get us the maintenance. That would get us, that would get us, I think, 180 something streetlights there. The minority are the underground, and those are the ones where we really hadn't gotten into the weeds of Church Street and Ice Glen, and then there might be other things on Main Street, Elm Street, South Street. So we thought, let's do that. We know we're leaving some savings on the table from the rental. But it's still on would have about a 2+ year payback, and we would get used to the light. And anyway, that was what we thought, and that's what we applied for. And that, I think everyone felt really positive about that approach. I think George was trying to convince us to do more, because I think he has much more confidence in and experience with underground lighting, but we're cautious. So we took it a little bit slower, but still scrambled, and we got it in. So that's really great. Mike, did you want to add any, or Buck, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think, in regards to the underground lines, we know that our underground lines are incredibly old in town. As far as the power running throughout the downtown area. So it was definitely something that was a concern, and I think we've addressed it, and we'll still push National Grid to put the 3,000 kilowatt bulbs in, so we'll get the environmental impact and that, but we just won't take over the maintenance part.
Oh, I didn't know that would have been, so that I might want to we might want to talk, I didn't know that was exactly the decision about them just replacing them. Maybe that makes sense, or I didn't know whether we were going to try to pursue that more and see if we could get more information or whatever about the underground and do that as a round two. But either way, we have options open.
I would not advocate for us taking over the underground lines, period.
Okay.
So,
okay. We can do that in 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is. We wouldn't get the,
even if the above ground turns out to not be a problem, it's not a problem because you can just bring an electrician in. When you go to underground, you're dealing with having to dig up sidewalks, tear up ground, everything else. There's no comparison between the two.
okay.
That is easy to do, or that we'll understand better. The other concern that we have to have is, and I mentioned this to George, we actually, he kept saying we could take the savings and tuck it away. That's actually not true, because we don't pay that. We pay for our solar credits. So even though for solar credits from our solar facility. So most of our electric bill is paid by solar credits. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up with a surplus of solar credits, but we're still obligated to buy those solar credits. So there's going to be no savings. Now, George did mention about going out and selling the solar credits. But when you sell the solar credits, you tend to sell them at anywhere from 75 to 80 cents on the dollar. So it's a loss, but it is something you can build. So when we build the budget next year, you're not going to see streetlights come down much, if any, at all. What'll happen is we'll end up building a surplus of credits that eventually, when the solar field is no longer operational, we'll have years worth of credits probably built up at that point. So it's something that we have to look at, because I would say a good 80% of our electric bill is covered by solar credits. And now we'll have enough to pretty much cover our entire electric bill and then have a surplus. So
Right.
we have to
Now,
buy those credits.
last year we had a surplus from the solar, I think.
Yeah. So we're going to end up with a greater surplus in future years.
Right. So we end up, well, we get the savings. It's just the savings are in a form that we can't use. They're not a savings to the taxpayer until we own our solar system.
Right.
And when will that be? 10 years or 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's like, it was a 20-year agreement when it went in. And then depending on whether or not they have to decommission it, take it down or whatever at the end of 20 years or upgrade it, I haven't really looked at that contract, but you're still talking, probably at least 15 years left.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, maybe that's another project for someone with more knowledge than me, but to look at if there's any other short-term thing for the solar credits that we can do. I mean, I don't know what that would be, but maybe there's community solar or some other way for our town to benefit from them. Anyway, that's another conversation. I don't know enough about it, but we could look at that. All right. Well, that seems like that's at least, I'm sure George would have things to say about that, but he's not here. So we can always have that as another conversation. Now we wanted to talk, I think this is really where we need George, but it's to talk about the timing of everything. And we might not be able to get too far on that today, but I really wanted to start to address that because, Mike, I don't know what to say. I think that the issues where there's a bunch of timing issues, we won't hear from Mass Electric until December 15th at the earliest. There's a big backlog in ordering materials. There's a delay in purchasing the lights, the street light pole, well, the fixtures from National Grid. And then I think installation won't take that long. That's a 2-week period, but there's a long delay into that. And George he really wants to order now because he only thinks that prices are going to increase. And the delay.
So George, I will speak on that. I spoke to George on that matter.
Okay. Well, then you have a more recent, I didn't really talk to him since he spoke to you. Go on.
Yeah. So he brought up the fact of, he wanted to buy the light fixtures. It's about $24,000. Now we don't have a grant and we don't have an appropriation for that. So I informed him of that. He was talking about he may go out because he feels as though this project will happen. And he talked about securing the lights himself. I told him any decision he makes on doing it himself is fine, but I cannot enter a purchase order or any type of agreement that the town's going to definitely do this until there's funds available, whether through a grant or through an appropriation. So, yeah. So that's where we stand. He may end up going, I'm not going to, everything's going up and we're getting a lot of pressure from groups saying, hey, buy now because things are going to go through the roof, but it's not. That's not the way we can operate. You have to have an appropriation in order to go forward.
Right. And I wanted to talk about, go on, go Daryl, just interrupt. Yes.
Just a thought on this, as far as the price of things. That's true. Prices will probably go up. Everything's going up. However, with the administration, the presidential administration, and the agenda they're pushing as far as, cost effective energy, wouldn't it be probable that in the future there's going to be even more grants out there to pay for this stuff. The grants should be plentiful the way they're talking. When it's going to happen, I don't know. But if the cost goes up, there may be grants to cover that cost as well.
Right. I mean, I think that you can't, I think that's if that would delay things maybe too much. I mean, this, we know there's a dedicated fund of 10 million a year to cover these things. So that's a possibility, but that's, not a guarantee, that's an unknown, really an unknown, more of an unknown than this.
Right.
I mean, for me, my concern is that it's more like looking at the worst case scenario. I mean, the one thing that I have to get off my plate, so we're going to is to get the annual report in. And that has to be in by November. So I think the only thing I'm missing is the sort of the calculation of the new garage, DPW garage replacement, and the figures of how much we've saved. So I need to get that from Mike, and I'll be pestering him. Mike, you can just remind him as well that that's important, because this grant depends on that having been completed. And then I think we're in good shape to get it, but I think there are no guarantees. And, they're not going to tell us anything off the record. I know they fund street lighting, and we've been good, and we've complied with everything, and we've done all our reporting, and we should be in very good shape with a cost-effective project that's well described. That being said, this is my question to you, Mike. In the worst case scenario, well, first of all, I want to make sure that if George does buy them, that then it's eligible under the grant, because you're not supposed to get reimbursed for things that you've already done. But he would say that we don't, nothing's going to be done or paid for or whatever until after that. So that's one concern. But the other one is, if for whatever reason the grant doesn't come through, are we going to try to do a special town meeting? I mean, the streetlights are only $1,700.
Right. We have the money in the allocation for George's work to pay for the purchase of the streetlights.
And that can cover that. That's allowed under that allocation?
Yeah, we could definitely do that as part of this project. What we can't do is the upgrades, the physical upgrades. I mean, the total project's like 58,000. He wants to buy 24,000 of the ones that he thinks are going to go up in price. What we'll end up getting is an invoice from him for these products. So, the only thing I would say is, we are not in any way committing to purchasing any lights at this point. So whatever he's doing that's his business. He wants to do, but I told him clearly, and I'm telling you guys clearly right now, the town is not committing to anything until there's an appropriation either from a grant or an article at town meeting.
Okay, so I understand that, and I think we're all clear on that, and there's going to be recording of this meeting, and George can watch that recording. I still feel like now I want to protect the town and understand the town, and now I want to do, I want to think about George too, and him 24 grand or whatever he's out, so that in the worst case scenario, and if it's not funded, would we, with a 2.1 year payback, would we recommend Pat and Daryl and Buck, or police chief? I don't know how you like to be called. What do you like to be called?
Just call me Daryl.
Okay, thank you. Would we want to go to town meeting and say we recommend that we go ahead? We recommend that we go ahead and purchase the lights and spend the money to now buy the fixtures, and get this.
I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't.
Are you froze on my computer?
Yeah, you froze on ours.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it says my connection is unstable. Okay.
I don't see why we wouldn't pursue then a town meeting vote to do this. I mean, yeah,
I don't either.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to be dead in the water if we don't get the funding from DOER. And also, And also, let's say George buys the lights. Well, let's say he buys the lights. He would also want us to, and that's the next question. Do we go out to, do we purchase them in advance of hearing from, well, I think maybe Mike and you and me, we can talk to George about that. But I think it's the risk and the caution factor. If we purchase the lights now, we need to own the lights before anything can be installed on them. Now we would have light bulbs. If we purchase the lights, we could own them and maintain them, and then wait for town meeting to get the money to install them. Really. But in the meantime, we would have to set up a maintenance contract, which wouldn't be that long either. I mean, it's just sort of how much are we willing to go through?
We need to make sure we can get a maintenance agreement in place with the purchase of the lights.
Okay.
I would want to have a commitment from a company saying, yeah, they're going to agree to the next 3 years to be our vendor, and they meet the qualifications of National Grid to work on above ground lines.
Okay.
So that would be the piece I'd want to work with George on. We have some additional funds if we need to move into the next phase from the original 15,000 to get some of that taken care of, and then execute the purchase with National Grid. I don't want us purchasing the light without an agreement in place to have somebody, because from that moment we purchase them, we own it, and
Right. So we could own it. So by everyone's with us, right? There's a possibility that there'll be fixtures in George's basement. We'll own the lights. We'll have
I would ask that we stop talking about whatever George is going to do. That's his decision. Let's not talk about that part. We're going to purchase.
Okay. Well, hopefully he has a
contingent.
Right. Okay. So we would maybe potentially we would go ahead and buy the lights and set up a maintenance agreement and do all that ahead of, I think in my mind, we could tell National Grid that we're going to buy the lights. It's going to take them 2 months they have 2 months to prepare the paperwork, November, December. By then we'll have heard.
Yeah. I think the only piece is right now, and Laura, you and George could work on it, is getting that maintenance agreement in place with somebody and then move on the purchase.
Okay.
And then the next step is going to
either we hear about the grant or we put something on the warrant for town meeting.
Right.
And you feel comfortable with owning with all of that, with that process and that timeline?
Yes.
Okay. Pat, do you feel comfortable with that process and that timeline?
If Mike feels comfortable, I feel comfortable.
Okay.
Ditto.
I feel the same way. I mean, I'm not trying to pressure anybody to do anything, and it's, I won't talk about George anymore except to say that anyone taking any risk makes me uncomfortable. I like to have the ducks in a row too, but that's okay. I think he'll be clear. You've been clear with him. That's fine. So then I think we're in good shape. I think what's really going to be good is that at this point, we know all those lights are going to be replaced with LEDs anyway. They has to be done. And now we'll get the savings. We'll get all of the savings from that whenever that happens. So that's a good project, and we'll have a better design and a better product. And actually, I was a little bit more, I think the lights that are going to be the most visible and everything, I mean, I guess National Grid will install 3,000 as downtown Elm Street or whatever they do, but that's, I think that's where people are going to be notice them the most. And Daryl, your issue is more about the lighting around the crosswalk. So that might be another separate thing that we want to talk about at some point.
Right. If
we need to upgrade or improve our lighting. And that means that we still probably want to look at Ice Glen and Church Street for the ones that we own already. Right, everybody? Because those are I think we own a couple of underground, but we don't have to do that today. Let's everyone should try to do those walks or drives at night And we only own the decorative fixtures, right, Mike? Is that right?
Yeah, most of the decorative fixtures are owned by us.
Okay.
So, but my understanding in those areas that yeah, we have some areas like Church Street that have decorative lighting on it. And then
Yeah.
I am going to pursue with National Grid what the cost of actually upgrading our downtown lights to what they offer as far as decorative lighting, because they have two styles of decorative lighting they'll put in. Because some people have mentioned they don't like just the metal poles, especially
Right.
now that they won't let them be painted. That that in our downtown a more historic look. So National Grid does offer two styles
Right.
that they would maintain, would be part of their maintenance. But they only offer two styles because once again, they don't
Oh,
want.
that must be, here's George. Okay. Up, George? Good morning. We've been on the phone. I think we're just about to wrap up. We've been talking about the timeline. And we're now talking about the decorative fixtures downtown, but I think, and so maybe Mike, can you really quickly, can you summarize more quickly than us? Or you want me to try?
Yeah, I would say the summary right now is we want to work on getting some type of maintenance agreement in place so we can purchase the bulbs, or purchase not the bulbs, but purchase the lights from National Grid, all the above ground, and do that one step each. So have somebody in place to maintain them, move forward with the purchase, then look at the lighting upgrade either through the mass or through the DOER grant or at annual town meeting.
Right. I think, George, what we're trying to do is just look at the worst case scenario. And no matter what scenario we do, best case or worst case, most important is the maintenance agreement, as Mike said, for the above ground. Then once we're confident of that, then go to the purchase of them and then hear about the grant and then move forward. But if we're in the worst case scenario, Mike doesn't want to have a special town meeting, so we would wait for town meeting at the end of May and then get the appropriation to do everything there. But I think we're all feeling pretty confident that we'll get funded.
Well, and I agree with you. I think you probably will. The question is, though, for me, is do I proceed with the order for the street, at least the lights, which have the long lead time?
We cannot commit to any purchase of any equipment is the official stance of the town until there's an appropriation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should have another conversation with Mike about this. This is really, I would say, unless you have some contingent use for them, or you're willing to keep them for 6 months and wait for town meeting, I mean, I think that for you to be doing this as a favor to the town isn't really necessary, is what I would say. Anyone else say that, Mike?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, we can talk about it offline, but really, we will live with, we as the town will live with an increased price, because that's the way of the world. There's no reason for you to have to put yourself at risk for the town's behalf.
Yeah, but I'd gotten the impression from Mike that you had enough free cash that you could afford to go to the board and get approval at least to purchase the lights themselves. We wouldn't obligate ourselves beyond that.
George, from working in municipal government, George, that we don't have an appropriation right now, whether it's free cash or whatever we go after for the purchase, that until it's approved, the appropriation, whether from free cash, from the tax rate, from wherever, we cannot commit. And I went over this with you, that there's no way the town can enter a purchase sales agreement, anything else with you for purchase of the light at this point. We do not have an appropriation.
Okay, so and you're not willing to do it if for some reason we don't get the grant, you're not willing to have a special town meeting early. Just
to do for one article, I've never been in a community that is going to do it over this one article. I I would say that we'd be looking at our May town meeting. So we're talking December before we know a May town meeting, which we would put together and have it on the article for May. This holding a town meeting in say January, once we find out by the time we advertise the meeting and the rest, the annual town meeting's in May. I would put it on the annual. That's
Well-
mine. This committee could ask the select board about holding a special town meeting. But my opinion is if this is the only issue that needs to come forward based on the timing, I would wait till May. And if that means that there's an increase in the cost of bulbs or whatever, we'll deal with that based on that as far as moving forward. So, yeah.
Okay, all right.
But
All right.
in the meantime, we can buy and own the lights. We can buy and maintain the lights as is.
Right, and what I'm going to do is I will send you over next week a draft document that we can use to secure quotes for the interim maintenance.
Yep.
Okay, very
That'd be
good.
the key. Yep.
And is whatchamacallit that you used interested in doing it,
Oh, yeah.
Mike?
That's what I'd reach out to right away is Kamali and then
Molly,
whoever
right.
else.
Okay, very good. And I can, yeah, very good. Okay. I think that's where we are. Mike, I think they have had special town meetings for one or two things in Stockbridge before. I don't think that's unheard of. I think there was one last year.
No, there wasn't
Anyway,
one last year because I was here, but
oh.
the annual meeting was pushed off. The year before that, you had 3 or 4 articles that went on a special fall town meeting. And you have had some really big ones. I think there was like a bond bill for $3 million for bridges a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But for a $24,000 or whatever article we're talking, we don't even know the price tag at this point, depending on what we get from DOER. I'm just saying that I don't see this one as a major push
Got it.
to get done sooner, because if we're talking a 10% change in the $24,000 cost for the lights, we're talking about a $2,000 difference. If we were looking at a $3 million project and potential 10% shift, might be a little different story.
Okay. Okay. I think that is that's where we're standing, George.
Okay, all right. So I won't, fortunately, I haven't done anything yet, so I won't.
Right. I mean, I think
let's
it's still great to, if we can secure bids that will last for, whatever that time horizon is while we wait to hear from DOER, that would be great. The other thing that I'm not scrambling on it, but it's just like I know what these reports are. And even when we get them in, there's always wrinkle in our annual reports. There's just always a wrinkle. So that's why I want to try to get that in early so they can review that and make sure that that's in good shape, because our being eligible for a grant depends on us being compliant with all of our reporting.
Yeah.
So that's my next thing over the next, I have about 2 weeks to put that really together. And then we'll wait to hear on the grant. I know that they've received everything and that's all good.
Okay.
Anything, and then will any other questions or comments from the committee? Everyone's feeling good about your contributions and your time and where we are? Good. Okay, because the only thing is, Mike, I'd like to send our committee members the proposal that we submitted to DOER.
Yep.
Can I do that?
Yeah, you can definitely send the proposal that was out. It's actually a public document once it's submitted, so
Okay.
everybody can have it.
So I
If
don't have
anybody
to,
else wants it, we can get it out to, if anybody else requests, we'll send it to anybody else also. Yeah.
fine, but once I've submitted it, I can send it to our committee.
Yep.
And don't forget, Laura, I sent you a revised report that includes the section on just the overhead
Yes.
lights. In this.
Okay. Yes. And yeah, we revised the report to go with it to reflect that we're just looking at the overhead lights. So I can submit that too. Okay, and DOER, and actually just on the energy savings, just to let you guys know, it's about a 6-year payback. But really, the big payback is, or in addition, the big payback is by owning the lights. That brings it down to a 2-year payback because we pay so much rental to DOER, to National Grid. Okay.
Right.
Sounds good, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and your work on this.
Are we going to approve the
Thank
minutes?
you, Laura.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Can we approve all the last few minutes that I sent out so those can be posted?
I so
Any
move.
motion?
I so move that we approve all the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Thank you, Pat, for reviewing everything. I so, what can I tell you? I depend on you. I depend on everybody. Okay, we all do. Thank you. We're a good team. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.